I'll send you to that nursing home one way or another, and gladly." Marcus didn't shout. He didn't even look at me. He stood by the dining room window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the yard as if I weren't there. Sunlight fell through the blinds in thin, cruel stripes across his face, making him look like a stranger wearing my son's skin. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. The coffee pot hissed behind me, releasing that burnt morning smell, and I clung to it, the only warm thing in the room. "I see," I managed. My voice was steady, though my hands trembled as I poured the coffee. It splashed over the rim, staining the saucer. He didn't notice. "You'll be happier there," he continued, his tone as cold as the silverware between us. "They'll take care of you properly. Meals on time, medication sorted, people your own age." I stared at him, trying to find traces of the boy who used to cry if I was late picking him up from school. That boy who swore he'd never leave me alone. But the man in front of me, his suit, his watch, his careful distance, wasn't my child. He was someone who wanted me gone. I didn't argue. Not then. Years of raising him had taught me that silence could be stronger than anger. He took my quiet for surrender. "You have 2 days, Marcus said, still not looking at me. "I'll call the place tomorrow." 2 days. As if my life could be packed into a weekend. He left soon after, the door clicking shut like a period at the end of a sentence I hadn't finished. The house seemed to breathe differently once he was gone, emptier, yet suddenly clearer. I sat at the table, fingers wrapped around the cooling cup. My reflection trembled in the surface of the coffee, pale and lined but alive. He thought he'd decided my future. He thought I was too old, too tired to resist. But as I wiped the spill from the saucer, a strange calm settled in my chest. He didn't know me anymore. He didn't know what I was capable of. He said he'd send me away, so I started a secret plan. The next morning, I began to take stock. Not of money or furniture, but of the fragments that made up my life. The things Marcus would inherit, sell, or simply throw away. I moved slowly through the house, notebook in hand, like an appraiser of ghosts. The living room held 40 years of birthdays and holidays pressed into its corners. The lace curtains I sewed myself, yellowed but still soft. The antique silver tray that had served every Sunday roast. To Marcus, it was clutter. To me, it was proof that I'd lived. In the hallway, I stopped at the old family portrait. His tiny hand clutching my shoulder, that defiant little grin. He couldn't have been older than 6. I traced the glass and wondered when that warmth had gone out of him, or had it gone out of me first. Upstairs, the attic door creaked open, exhaling dust and memory. Boxes stacked like sentinels waited. I opened one marked, "Marcus, School." Inside, a tangle of ribbons, notebooks, a drawing of a house with crooked windows. My handwriting on the back, age 7, said this is where we'll live forever. Forever, indeed. Another box held my own history, a folded wedding dress wrapped in tissue, the edges yellow as old newsprint. And tucked beneath it, a worn shoebox. I lifted the lid. Inside lay a hospital bracelet, my name barely visible, and a photograph. Me holding newborn Marcus, eyes exhausted but shining. My throat tightened. That picture had seen everything. The joy, the sacrifice, the promise that I would always protect him. But maybe protection had turned into permission. Maybe I'd protected him from consequences too long. I placed the photo aside carefully, not as a keepsake but as a reminder. By afternoon, my notebook had columns. Sell. Keep. Hide. Sell. The antiques, the jewelry, anything with value that he might claim, for my benefit. Keep. The memories that fit in one suitcase. Hide. Documents, cash, and a few secrets I wasn't ready to reveal. When the light began to fade, I looked around at the half-packed room. For the first time, I didn't see a house filled with things. I saw choices, each one a piece of freedom. I counted my life like money, and made a list. I started small. That's how revolutions are born. Not with noise, but with whispers. The first to go was the porcelain lamp in the hallway. Marcus always said it was too old-fashioned, so I told him I'd donate it. Instead, I listed it on a local marketplace under a different name. When the buyer came, a kind woman with silver hair and quick eyes, she paid in cash and said, "You don't see craftsmanship like this anymore." I smiled. Neither will my son, I thought. Each sale after that became easier. The crystal glasses, a lace tablecloth, the old cuckoo clock that hadn't worked in years, all quietly disappeared. When Marcus asked, I told him we were decluttering. He liked that word. It sounded modern, efficient, sensible. He even praised me for finally letting go of the past. I let him believe it. Lies are softer when they sound like agreement. Every coin and bill went into a tin box hidden behind the flour jar in the pantry. I counted it at night, fingers trembling not from guilt but from excitement. My secret fund was growing, and with it, my courage. One Thursday afternoon, I took a bolder step. I visited Mr. Dawson, an antique dealer I'd known since my teaching days. His shop smelled of old wood and polish, time preserved in glass cabinets. He looked up from his ledger and smiled. "Mrs. Price, haven't seen you in ages." I told him I was downsizing. He didn't question it, just offered fair prices and something rarer, respect. As he wrapped my silver candlesticks, a pair of younger customers nearby whispered about Marcus. Apparently, he'd bragged at a community event about finally getting his mother settled. I pretended not to hear, but inside, the words burned and fueled me. That evening, as I tucked the day's earnings into my tin, I realized how invisible I'd become in my own story, and how useful that invisibility could be. Marcus didn't suspect a thing. He saw only what he wanted to see, an old woman finally yielding. But every decluttering, every sale, every polite smile was another brick in the path I was building, one that led away from him. They thought I was losing things. I was gaining a plan. For most of my life, I believed survival was a solitary skill. You worked, you endured, you managed. But as my secret plan took shape, I began to learn something new. Sometimes help arrives quietly, dressed in ordinary kindness. It started with Claire, my next-door neighbor. She's in her early 60s, always carrying a pot of something fragrant and insisting it's too much for one. That week, she brought over chicken soup. I tried to refuse, but she set it on my counter anyway. "You've lost a bit of weight," she said, narrowing her eyes. "Everything all right?" I hesitated. Claire used to work in elder care. She knows how to read people. I gave her half a truth. "My son's been talking about arrangements." She nodded slowly, her ladle pausing midair. Then, as if changing the subject, she said, "You know, most folks don't realize. Guardianship papers don't mean control if the person can prove independence. As long as you handle your own affairs, no one can force your hand." She slipped the words between talk of recipes and the weather, but I caught their weight. I thanked her, and when she left, I wrote it down. Proof of independence. That phrase felt like armor. A few days later, while walking to the post office, I met Jordan, a young realtor who was measuring a property down the street. Polite, too polished for his age, but with an honest kind of energy. I asked him casually what a quick private sale might look like, hypothetically. He gave me his card. "If you ever need a discreet transaction, Mrs. Price, I can help." His tone was respectful, not patronizing. I tucked the card away like a secret weapon. Then there was Ben, the locksmith. He'd replaced our backdoor lock years ago after Marcus broke it as a teenager. I called him again, said I needed a spare set for emergencies. When he delivered them, he winked. "Still good at keeping things secure, eh?" He didn't ask questions, just left me an extra copy without charge. 3 small encounters, 3 unexpected allies. None of them knew the full story, yet each offered something essential: knowledge, opportunity, or trust. That night, I ladled the leftover soup into a bowl and smiled. Help had come from the last people I expected. It began with a single phone call, my first deliberate lie. Marcus had mentioned that the nursing home would send an inspector sometime this week. His tone had that smug certainty of someone who believes all the paperwork is already done. But I'd learned something from Claire's advice. Independence wasn't just about living alone, it was about appearing capable. If I could look competent on paper, I could buy myself time. So, I called the facility myself. I spoke with a cheerful receptionist named Amy. "This is Thelma Price," I said, injecting my voice with a confidence I hadn't felt in years. "My son arranged an intake visit, but I need to reschedule. Doctor's orders. He's reviewing my medical clearance." She apologized and promised to mark it as postponed. That was all it took. 10 seconds of calm deceit. When Marcus called that evening, his voice was tight. "They said you changed the appointment. Why would you do that?" I feigned confusion. "Oh, did they? Must have been a mix-up at the doctor's office. I thought they were waiting for my blood work." He exhaled sharply, the way he used to when I caught him lying as a boy. "Fine. I'll sort it out later." I'd done it. One small lie, and the clock reset. The next morning, I doubled down. I typed up a neat folder labeled Independent Living Plan, filled with lists of chores, receipts, and a fake exercise schedule. It looked official enough to convince anyone that I was still capable of managing myself. I even added a note signed Dr. Wilkes, an old neighbor's name, stating I was mentally sound and physically active. When Marcus stopped by, I made sure the folder was visible on the kitchen counter. He flipped through it, suspicious but uncertain. "You've been busy," he muttered. "Just proving I can still run my own life," I said, smiling faintly. He frowned, tapping the papers. "You shouldn't overdo it." "Neither should you," I replied quietly. After he left, I sat in the quiet, heart racing, half afraid the phone would ring with accusations. But it didn't. The lie held. It wasn't much, just a trick, a pause, but it felt like breathing again. I lied, and it bought me time. It didn't take long for Marcus to sense that something had shifted. My polite compliance had become inconvenient. My silence no longer felt like surrender, it felt like resistance. He started calling more often, his voice clipped and businesslike. "Mom, Dr. Patel said you missed your appointment." "I rescheduled," I answered evenly. "You can't keep doing that. You're not thinking clearly." "Oh, I'm thinking very clearly," I said. That phrase rattled him. Within days, the calls turned into threats, legal language, words like guardianship and incompetence hearing. He wanted control, not care. Then came the dinner. My niece had invited the family for her engagement celebration. I almost refused, but something told me to go. People remember what they see, not what they're told, and I wanted them to see me. The room buzzed with laughter and music. Marcus arrived late, already tense. He barely greeted me before announcing, too loudly, "I'm glad Mom could join us. We've been working on her transition plans. She's had a tough time accepting reality." Conversations died mid-sentence. A few relatives shifted uncomfortably. My face burned, but I kept my voice steady. "Reality?" I asked. "Or your version of it?" He chuckled, patronizing. "She forgets things sometimes. It's hard, taking care of everything." I wanted to cry, but instead, I smiled. What he didn't know was that Claire had come too, and she'd switched her phone to record. Marcus kept talking, digging deeper, explaining how mentally unstable I'd become, how it's for her own good. His words dripped with the kind of cruelty that hides behind concern. When he finally noticed the silence around him, it was too late. Eyes were on me, not with pity but disbelief at him. I stood, adjusting my shawl. "You've said enough, Marcus," I said softly. "Everyone here knows who raised who." I left the party without looking back. That night, Claire sent me the audio file. Every word, every mocking tone preserved like evidence. I played it once, then saved it to my hidden folder. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from power. He'd humiliated me in front of everyone. But the truth was now in my pocket. He shouted in front of everyone. I kept my secret smile. Freedom doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it slips in quietly, at midnight, through the back door of a nearly empty bank. By then, my plan was almost complete. The antiques were gone, the tin box behind the flower jar was nearly full, and my allies, without realizing the full picture, had given me everything I needed. Marcus's arrogance had blinded him. He still believed I was too feeble to manage my own affairs. That was his mistake. The final step was the hardest. I needed to make sure that, legally, I was untouchable. If Marcus tried to seize control of my accounts or property, he'd find nothing left to hold. So, with Claire's quiet help, I arranged to transfer what little I had into a new account, one he didn't know existed. Jordan, the young realtor, connected me to a lawyer who handled private relocations. He never asked too many questions. "Just sign here, Mrs. Price," he said, sliding the papers across the table. His tone was professional, but his eyes kind. That night, I couldn't sleep. The thought of betraying my own son, even after everything, twisted my heart. But then I remembered his voice at that dinner, cold and certain. "She forgets things sometimes." I didn't forget this. At 11:45 p.m., I walked to the small branch office 2 blocks from my house. The manager, a quiet woman named Lila who owed Claire a favor, let me in through the side door. The fluorescent lights hummed softly, the air heavy with the smell of paper and polish. I signed my name once, then again, transferring ownership of my house to a trust in my name only. Every stroke of the pen felt like a heartbeat. My hand trembled, but the line was straight. Lila handed me the final copy. "You're all set, Mrs. Price," she said. Outside, the night air felt electric. The street was silent except for the rustle of leaves, and I realized, for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid. Everything Marcus thought he controlled now belonged to me, and only me. One signature had severed the chain between us. One signature changed everything. Marcus arrived early, the way men do when they expect to win. His car tires crunched against the gravel, his shadow long across the porch I used to sweep every morning. I watched him from the kitchen window, calm as still water. The papers were ready, sealed in a manila envelope beside my teacup. He didn't bother to knock, just walked in, all confidence and cologne. "I called the facility," he said briskly. "They've got a room for you. We're moving your things this weekend." "Oh." I stirred my tea, pretending surprise. "That's quite fast." "Yes, well, it's time." His eyes darted to the walls, the furniture, the familiar things he thought were already his. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll handle the sale of the house." I almost laughed. Instead, I slid the envelope across the table. "You won't have to." He frowned. "What's this?" "The sale's already handled." He tore open the envelope, scanning the documents. His brow furrowed. Then his face changed, the calm certainty crumbling into disbelief. "You sold the house?" "I did." "Without telling me?" "You can't." He stopped mid-sentence, reading the last page. The name of the trust, the new account, the signatures. His hand trembled before he slammed his fist on the table, rattling the cups. "You had no right." I met his fury with silence. Then softly, "You had no right to decide my life for me." He stared at me, eyes wide, part rage, part confusion, and maybe, beneath it, fear. The kind that comes when control slips through your fingers. "I did what was best for you," he said, voice cracking. "No, Marcus," I said. "You did what was easiest for you." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The ticking clock filled the room. Finally, he gathered the papers, his movements sharp, mechanical. "You'll regret this," he muttered. "Perhaps," I said, sipping my tea. "But at least the choice will be mine." He left without another word, the door slamming behind him. The house echoed, empty but light, like it was finally breathing again. Outside, I watched him drive away, shrinking down the road until he disappeared. He came to shove me away. He never expected this. Freedom came quietly, without applause. No one congratulated me. No one helped me pack. The day I left the house, the air smelled of rain and dust, that strange mix of endings and beginnings. The truck driver loaded the last of my boxes without a word, and I gave him an address Marcus didn't know, a small apartment near the edge of town, with a view of a park and a cracked balcony rail. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first few days, I moved like a guest in my own life. I kept expecting someone to knock, to tell me it was all a mistake. But no one came. The phone stayed silent. Even Claire called less often, giving me space to breathe. The gossip spread quickly. I heard about it through a mutual cousin. "Marcus says you sold everything behind his back," she whispered over the line. "People think you've lost it." I smiled. Let them think what they liked. The truth didn't need an audience. Still, there were moments when the silence pressed too hard against the walls. The evenings stretched longer than they used to. Sometimes I'd pour 2 cups of tea by habit, then pour one down the sink. Freedom, I realized, has its own kind of loneliness. One morning, I took my tea out to the balcony. The sunrise spilled gold over the rooftops, and I thought of all the years I'd watched it from the same window, same chair, same house. For the first time, I was watching it from somewhere new. It didn't feel triumphant, it felt real. I started filling my days with small things. Helping at the library, joining a local sewing group, walking in the park. People there didn't know my story. They just saw me as Mrs. Price, the quiet lady who always brings extra biscuits. It was enough. Sometimes, when the phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number, my heart still jumped. But I never answered. Not yet. I had one. If winning means reclaiming your life piece by piece, even when it leaves scars. I won, and it cost me more than I thought. The seasons changed while I wasn't watching. Leaves fell, snow came and went, and one morning, I realized I no longer counted the days since I'd left. My small apartment had turned into something resembling home. Books stacked neatly, the scent of lavender tea lingering in the air, sunlight slipping across the floorboards. I had routines now. Morning walks through the park, afternoon shifts at the library, Sunday dinners with Claire and her grandchildren, who called me Miss Thelma, and insisted I try their lopsided cookies. Life, in its quiet way, had begun again. I'd even learned to laugh. Not the polite kind that hides pain, but the real, chest-deep laughter that comes when no one is watching. It surprised me every time. Then, one afternoon, I found an envelope slipped under my door. The handwriting was unmistakable, Marcus's. For a moment, my hands froze. I almost threw it away. But curiosity, or maybe closure, won. Inside was a short letter. His words were careful, uncertain. He said he'd had time to think. That he was sorry for how things turned out. He didn't ask for forgiveness, only that I let him visit. I read it twice, then placed it on the table beside my cup. For a long while, I just stared out the window. The park below was full of life. Children shouting, a dog chasing a ball, someone strumming a guitar. All of it moving forward as I had. When he arrived a week later, I met him at the door. He looked older, smaller somehow, the edges of his confidence worn away. "Mom," he said quietly, "you look well." "I am," I replied. We sat for a few minutes, polite words filling the air where anger used to live. When he asked if I'd ever consider moving back, I smiled. "I already did," I said. "Just not where you expected." He nodded, eyes wet, and for the first time in years, we sat in honest silence. After he left, I folded the letter and tucked it into my journal, not out of sentiment, but as proof. Proof that I'd survived him. He tried to send me away. I sent myself somewhere better.